My name is Thomas Weaver. I'm original hometown of 300 years is Waynesville, North Carolina. Mom's a Hyatt. They settled the county 1720, 1730. So I've been there for a while. I was born in Columbia, South Carolina, which I affectionately call the armpit of the South. From North Carolina, my parents actually moved to Cleveland, Mississippi when I was a little kid. And I remember we went to a private school, and I told my mom one day, "Mom, I want to bring home the best athlete in this school to play tomorrow." She said, "That's fine." And so I brought my friend home, who happened to be African-American girl. She was the best athlete in our school. And I remember my mother, now this is deep South in the 70s, didn't blink, which was a really strong foundation for me, but she also didn't explain what was going on. So I knew that something was different in the neighborhood when we were playing, but really nobody had the audacity to say anything to her because she was the best athlete in the school. That was my first cognitive thought of something's different here, but I really don't know what it is. In Waynesville, North Carolina, the percentages, the population was about 99.7% Caucasian, and the remainder African American. I was in athletics all my life, and so from Pee Wee football, we would have African Americans on our team, of course white people, all white coaches for everything through junior high and high school. And playing sports, it was kind of I don't know, it felt normal because you were honored on your merits. And so my black friends that played football or that I wrestled with or I ran track with, they were great athletes, and I just loved them for who they were. Retrospectively looking back, I realized that we all didn't go to the same parties. And none of us, no white dudes dated black girls and vice versa. It didn't happen at that time. So it seemed normal to me. I grew up hearing black jokes everywhere. There's a difference between racist people and prejudiced people, and some people who are culturally a little bit of both, and they don't know it's wrong yet. And they have to be told, or they have to be shown. And so my parents sent me off to boarding school in 9th grade. I was getting in a ton of trouble. My father was a pastor. My parents are Christ followers. And so they sent me to this boarding school in Asheville, North Carolina. And they asked me if I wanted to go. And my response at that time was yes. And that had to have been the Lord, because they had no football. They had no wrestling. They had this weird sport called soccer. And none of my friends were going to go. But I said yes, like an adventure. So I got there and I walked in, and it was about 30 to 40 countries represented and 240 kids. That was a game changer for me. I began to see that the paradigm I'd been taught is that really white people were the top of the food chain and everybody else in the world goes down from there. And I began to have these relationships with friends that were from around the world and around the United States that were different colors and races than me and were way smarter than me and way better looking than me and way better athletes than me, and came from families that truly had culture instead of my little hillbilly roots. And it placed me in my mind during those 4 years as a really small fish in a gigantic pond. Kind of corrected my emotional norms. I dated a girl in high school. She was from Jamaica, had English, black, and a few other things. My roommate was Japanese, who dated a Swedish girl. Like, I just got thrown into a soup bowl, which I really loved. And that changed everything. So when it was time for me to go to college, I went to Western Carolina University, which is typical bro college. Everybody that I've been to high school with and really in junior high with, that white crew was back. And all they wanted to do is drink Miller Lite, get in fights, and chase women. And it felt to me, even though I wasn't a Christian at the time, it felt about 2 or 3 inches deep. The year before, when I played soccer in Mississippi, I remember taking one of the guys on my hall. He was an exchange student from Ghana, I think. And there was a local watering hole that we all went to. When I walked in with him, it got quiet. And I didn't understand it. And he's like, "Hey, Tom, I have to leave." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And this is deep Mississippi. And so we left. And that was another piece of my change. Like, wait a minute, what is happening here? In my early 20s, when I began to see that anybody in a homogenistic mindset One way only. This is how it's supposed to be. Whether they were black or white or Hispanic or Latin or whatever was wrong. And it had to be, hey, there is one people group on the planet. It's the human race. And God has created us beautifully in his image, different colors, different cultural backgrounds. That changed everything for me. After college, took a job, was working in Alabama at the time, got a trucking franchise in Corpus Christi, moved down there with my dog in August. My dog would not go outside for 2 days. It was so stinking hot. And then eventually moved to McAllen, Texas, which is right on the border. I met my wife in a church in Houston. I had business partners up there. Got married, drug her down to the border. And McAllen, Texas has some of the finest people on the planet. It is also one of the hardest places to live in the world. It's about 91% Latin American. It's 7 to 8% white, and then the other is Asian influence that's growing down there, small African American. I was a minority for 18 years, and I saw things that I'd never seen before. I remember asking a company to send a guy over to work on our garage door, and when the two guys in the work truck got there, and the guy saw me, I saw anger and distaste in his eyes. Now, I was heavily affirmed as a child. And I'm white, and I'm from the South. It's very hard to throw me off my game. But I remember thinking, why would you hate me? I have done nothing to you. And in thinking through that mindset later, I thought, this is where so many of my brothers and sisters are. Why would you hate me? I haven't done anything to you. And so the fear is this drive that everybody has that I have coached or counseled or consulted with. What will people think? What will people think? What will people think? Which I'm guilty of it too. But when we as people who say we follow Jesus are more concerned with what everybody thinks instead of what does God think about this mindset right now? What does God think about this action? When our concern is on others, the anxiety, and I was having a conversation with my teenage daughters the other day, if you do not put anxiety to death, it will begin to take over everything in your life. It metastasizes like cancer. And so it's a fear that keeps people from saying anything. I think when the rioting and the racial unrest and the issues and the murders and the mayhem, all that began to happen, I know that very few of my white neighbors thought about going across the street to their African American neighbors and saying, hey, what's going on? How are you doing? What am I missing right now? Because their fear will say, don't say anything. What will they think? Well, if that was Jesus' mindset, he never would have gone to the cross. He just would have taken over the world, did what he wanted to do. His mindset was, what does my Father think? What am I called to do? And therefore, what am I called to say? So fear is a big one. Complacency is the second. I think any people group, but I'll speak to mine, can get very comfortable in their norms. And we all know that when you're 21 coming out of college and you've been eating ramen for 4 years and your car is a hoopty and you got no money in your account, you'll do anything. And you're passionate about everything. But then what begins to happen is you get some more stuff. Now you got a house. Now you get married. Now you have some kids. Now you got a jet ski. Now you got, and these things will drive you to complacency in terms of your passions. Well, I got to protect my stuff. And so your choice and the fear is to be complacent. Just wait. Just be still. Don't do anything. Somebody else will do the right thing. When I came to Christ, one of the first things I was taught was there's sins we commit. Like I'm going to go rob a bank, punch somebody in the face. And there are sins of omission. So there are sins of commission, what we do. There's sins of omission, that which we choose not to do. And I think the church today, people today, are guilty of sin, of not doing what they should do. So we got to go across the street and have a conversation. We have to do things that will make us uncomfortable. We have to put ourselves in a place where people might think poorly of us. I mean, even all of us shooting this video series right now may come against some aggression with that. And as leadership, we're okay with that because we know that God's design and desire for the church and for people is unity and oneness. And as believers, we understand that the glue of that oneness is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Riots aren't going to help it. Your political party is not going to help it. Believe me, Jesus was not a Republican. He wasn't a Democrat. He sure wasn't Tea Party, and he wasn't progressive. He was the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And so he calls us to follow him. And so we're going to have to radically love. Can't be complacent. Going to have to face our fears. And I feel like I'm preaching to myself right now. It's a reinvigoration every day of saying, okay, in your name, Almighty God, what are you calling me to say? What are you calling me to do? Whether I lose everything or not, what pleases you? And that's my family's desire. We fail at it all the time, but we kind of crawl forward. And that's where I want the church to just, we don't have to be these onward Christian soldiers movement. It needs to be, let's crawl. Let's crawl in the right direction. Let's do the right thing. Let's give the enemy the middle finger and give God all praise. That's what I want to do.